Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of your Frederish podcast. My name's Gary, and I'm your host for the day. So, what are you waiting for? You know what you got to do. You know what we usually do when we're listening, when you are listening to this podcast. Yeah, you got it right. You guessed it correctly. Get up, go get your cup of coffee, glass of water, glass of wine, beer, whatever it takes for you to relax because we have a journey, a little journey, a short journey right in front of us. And what is it that we're gonna talk about today? Yes, you read the title. So, yeah, pronunciation, okay? For the English learners, that is like everyone here, myself included somehow, be careful because the verb pronunciar is pronounce with O, with an O, and an U, okay? Pronounce. When the word pronunciation takes no O at the middle of it and no U, it's just only you, no, just the letter U. Pronunciation. All right, so having said that, and without any further ado, let's just jump into the topic, today's topic. A lot of people ask me, hey, being born Brazilian and never, having never lived in the United States, how is it that you acquired an American accent? Well, the simple and straight answer to that question is by listening to American stuff, like movies, music, etc. All right? And by emulating them, okay? I understand, I have to be honest, it changes, it varies from person to person. Some people have, for lack of a better way of saying that, for lack of a more accurate way of saying that, some people have better ears, if that makes any sense. Like, some people can hear better, of course, in terms of hearing effectively, can hear more, than other people, which I totally believe it's not my case at this point. And some people have, which I believe is my case, it's always been, a more sensitive listening skill, hearing skills, meaning like we're able to detect small nuances, vocal nuances. All right. As I said, that changes, that varies from people, from person to person. All right. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because I come up with lots as an English teacher. I have come up with hundreds, I've come up with hundreds, if not thousands of students on my 10-year teaching journey. And I have to say that most of them are not good listeners, are not good, as I said, vocal nuances detectors, all right? Which totally does not and absolutely does not, which is totally and completely not meant to disencourage or to say that these people would never learn English or would never speak good English. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that for these people, the target of speaking English with a very good accent, let's use this word, okay? I'm gonna go through with more details about this word further on, but let's keep this using this word accent. So having a very good and as I say, native-like accent for these people, for the people that don't hear the things, the details, the nuances, the vocal nuances very well. All right, for whatever reason it is, I'm not here to discuss the reasons behind it, okay? But for these people, I do not think that having this goal is sensible. No, I don't think it makes much sense. I think that perhaps they should focus on only speaking English as best as they can, or this can be actually applied to any language out there, So I really believe that people could and should, act the way that is naturally suited for them, But having said that, okay, the first thing if you have to ask yourself when it comes to, you know, hey, I want to have my pronunciation. I want to have a better pronunciation. I'm not okay with with the way I speak the words out. You know, I'm not satisfied with the way phrases, words connect into phrases coming out of my mouth. So before you get to after identifying this urging feeling, you must ask yourself, why is it that I want to speak better? Okay, because if you've learned English already to a practicing point, meaning that you're already talking to people, you're already having conversations, interacting with people, maybe even having actual and real relationships with people in English, and it's working, people understand you, you understand them. That's it. That must be the main goal. That must be the core of the thing, of learning a second language. English is no different. So you have to ask yourself, why do I want to get better? Especially if you're not, as I said, quote unquote, not a good listener. Listener in the aspects I related before. And how to identify if you're a good listener? Are you good with emulating people? Like the way they speak. I know there's the down part of it, like mockery and stuff, but anyways, nevertheless, as a child growing up, were you the kid that would pay attention to the way people said things, and not only to what people said, but the way the words came out of their mouths? If you answer yes to that question, it's like, I am positive you're a very good, for lack of a better word, candidate to having a pretty good accent, like speaking with a very native-like accent. If you're not that kid, if you're not that person, if you never pay attention to the way people speak, then you're gonna have a harder job on that matter. You're gonna have perhaps a little longer or considerably longer road ahead of you, right? But don't take that to discourage you, okay? Because getting back a little bit on what I said before, you have to find the reasons, okay? If you can already communicate decently, what is communicating decently? Committing as minimum amount of grammar mistakes as possible, and being understood. Understand and being understood at least 97 out of 100 times. Basically, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, who knows? That's it, but again, what's the reason? I can't answer that question for you. You have to answer that question to yourself. What I can say, having been there, having done that, as they say, don't do that just to show off, because that doesn't pay off. Right? Like, if you just like, hey, I want to sound like a native speaker because, well, I'm gonna get to places and people will worship me, will praise me and worship me. Well, maybe in some circumstances, as a Brazilian, I must say that people in Brazil tend to value the appearances, But at the end of the day, what do you get from it? Forgive my honest opinion, but I think it's a vague motive, all right? But if you're still down to it, who am I to say you to go the other way around? Please go ahead. I just think it's a bad idea, all right? Well, one good motivation, I would say, for speaking with the best accent as possible is because you feel comfortable with that. Yeah, that's it. That's a good thing. I myself, I had that, as I said, been there, done that thing of how I want to sound like a native, I will impress people. But then when I grew up, when I matured, I just realized there was like that didn't make any sense. But I just kept like, hey, I like speaking the language well. I like to speak as close to the native speaking as possible, Going a little bit more over the word accent, well, if you tell me I have an American accent, well, I will agree with you, I would say, or at least it's more American than anything else. But I won't quite, completely agree with that. Like you are American, like there's nowhere in America where people speak exactly the way I speak. I'm sure that it's a neutral English. Why? Because I don't live in the United States, So am I on a daily contact with the language? Yes, of course. But people from literally multiple places, and I'm okay with that, Why? Because I have studied the phonemes, the English phonemes. I'm gonna go over them in a few more minutes. But I know that whatever, whichever word comes out of my mouth, it will, exceptions here and there, of course, new words or archaic words, old words, but in general, I will get to pronounce them at least at an acceptable, form, so to say. All right. So yeah, that's it. Make sure you have your good reasons. Don't try to lie to yourself. Don't try to lie to people. Maybe just for fun, it's cool, but because at the end of the day, you will speak to people and you're not gonna lie. People are gonna ask, regardless of your accent, they're gonna ask, where are you from? And you're not gonna lie. I think I said that before on one episode here, but if I didn't, I'd say that again. There's no point of trying to pass off as a native speaker. That doesn't make any sense, and I would say it's not even ethical, depending on the circumstances. But that's it. That's my opinion. All right. So bottom line here, just find a good reason. Make sure you have a good reason, a noble reason. Whichever reason it is to you, go for it. So the question I ask you right now, and actually ask people all the time, I ask myself many times in the past, maybe I still do ask myself about it, is it worth sounding like a native speaker of the language? Okay, all right, it's quite flattering having people asking you like, hey, you sure you've never been to this country? Like the country, whatever the country you sound like, whatever the place you sound like. Sometimes you're talking about sounding like from some nations. Sometimes we talk about sounding like someone from a specific region, right? We're gonna talk more about it. But anyways, is it worth sounding like a native? Well, I cannot answer that question to you. As I said before, everyone has got their own motivations, but I would like to go over the pros and cons, okay? Pros. Well, the only real pro, right? Apart from being flattered by people, having people praising your communication skills, all right, that's good. Not gonna lie, but as I said, it's kind of vain, kind of vague. Anyways, but the way native speaker speak a language is the way that said language, and there's only one way, of course, that's why we have multiple accents, but having, being able to speak exactly or almost exactly the way a certain people speak, a certain amount of people speak, means that you are, already on a stage with the language that you are speaking. You are, how can I even explain that? Gosh, you are pronouncing the words the way people, let me rephrase it. The way people pronounce today, no matter what language we're talking about, the way, I speak with my native Portuguese accent is a result of many years, hundreds, thousands, who knows, of people speaking, and repeating the words exhaustively, and non-stopping, Of course, new words, new things, new concepts being added, but it is a result of the way we speak is a product, okay? So what's my point here? No matter what may change from one language to other languages, there are certain aspects that are universal, okay? I could go over some of them right now, but I'm just gonna focus in the one that means to the conversation we're having here. Comfort. Yes, I didn't get the wrong word. I said comfort, okay? Being comfortable, speaking comfortably, because it is hard to, I'll give one example, okay? Why, for example, the article a car, a man, why does it change to an before words starting with a vowel pronunciation, like an excellent car, a car, an excellent car? Because if people say, answering the question, because if you say a excellent car, it will sound weird, okay? It will sound uncomfortable, all right? So the way native, bottom line here, okay, wrapping it up, my point here, the way native speaker is the way the language has found to fit, to suit, inside people's mouths. Because biologically speaking, our mouths are pretty similar, there isn't much difference between the mouths. There's considerable amount of differences between the legs, the arms, the eyes, but I may be, totally wrong here. If you guys know more about anatomy here, just let me know, okay? But despite of that, I believe that there isn't much difference from my vocal cords to Barack Obama's vocal cords, or Xi Jinping for that matter, So at the end of the day, we all have the same thing in common, okay? I mean, we all have lots of things in common, but especially this one, okay? Our mouths, our vocal cords, our speaking system. I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, okay? So, bottom line, I promise now, the way native speakers speak is the most comfortable one. If you're speaking a second language, you're almost never, especially if you're a beginner, you're never as comfortable as you are speaking your first language, It's not impossible. I am 100% comfortable speaking English here, but after how many years of doing that, Or in more than that, after many years of letting myself go with the language, okay? But that's another discussion. That's what I mean here in this point. So the next question is, the next point here actually is my word of advice here is pick one specific accent, okay? If you really want to sound like a native, you better pick one specific accent. And by specific, it can be like American English, British English, or Texan English, Londoner English, I don't even know how people from Sydney call themselves, but anyways, that's it. People, speak the way people, not only Australian accent, but also the way Sydneyers. Anyways, whatever. This will not only simplify your task, because you will be able to focus on the accent per se, but also it would also be a little more challenging at certain aspects. For example, you have to try to, if you're not at that specific place, to be in contact with more material, so to say, like movies, music, preferably podcasts, preferably people speaking spontaneously, but from people from that place, with that specific accent. Not necessarily native speakers, but people who speak with that said accent. All right. Yeah, I have much more to say about it. That's the one and direct point about it. The next point I'd like to address here is regionalism. Okay, to be more honest, regionalisms in the plural. All right, you choose the way you'd like to speak. Well, I want to sound like a Texan. I want to sound like a Californian. I want to sound like a Londoner. You know, but not with the way people speaking, with the way people pronounce the words. Come, will come. Many idioms. Okay, many slang words. Okay, or even some dialects depending on the context. All right, and it is, I wouldn't say mandatory, but interesting, pretty interesting actually, that you know them. You know, because okay, that will be a inevitable result if you're living in the place. All right, you want to speak the accent, like. But if you don't, well, that's big trouble. I mean, like, how will you know, like, I mean, not big trouble because you're not, as I said, obliged. You know, it's not mandatory that you that you speak, you know, certain idioms, certain expressions, etc. All right, but it's something to think about, isn't it? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, living in a place where, you know, people speak the way you want to speak is the best solution by far. You know, I'm more and more getting convinced to that. Like, you really have to live in the place, you know, especially, as I said, if the accent you want to emulate, you want to speak like, is in, you know, one specific accent, like from, as I said, Texas, from, you know, San Antonio, or from Los Angeles, you know, you name it. Well, the last word of advice here is study phonetics. Okay, study the phonemes. All right, the English language has got 26 letters, as most of you probably already know. But also it has 44 phonemes. What are phonemes? The way these 26 languages interact and form sounds. Okay. So make sure it's not a it's not a very complex language when it comes to speaking, especially if you're young and you grew up with the language around you, like music, movies, you know, Netflix, you name it. But make sure you understand what the symbols, you know, because you've probably already come across new words you're looking for, be that in on the dictionary, be that online, and you just notice that under the word there's a kind of a, you know, how should you pronounce this word, you know. This is not random, you know, it doesn't change from dictionary to dictionary, from place to place. It is universal. Okay, it is the transcription system. Okay, make sure you understand it. Make sure, I'm summarizing here this topic here. Okay, this is a science per se, but anyways, make sure you understand what each one of those symbols represent, which sound each one of those symbols represent. Of course, the pronunciation variations should be respected, and they usually are respected on the dictionaries, online, wherever I have ever seen them. But make sure you notice, like, hey, this, you know, is American, this is British, this is, you know, usually they just separate between American and British. You know, American is also Canadian, you know, and British is like all that thing, you know, like Irish, Australian, etc. All right, but make sure you know how to read the way, you know, the transcription system. All right, also the International Phonetic Alphabet. Okay, I'm just gonna say the name here, you're gonna have to go after that yourself, but it's pretty interesting, you know, especially if you're a curious person. But the cool thing about studying, not deeply, you don't have to unless you really want it, but having having certain amount of knowledge of this table, it is a table at the end of the day, mark that, is that you start understanding the places inside your mouth where the word, or where not the words, where the sounds are produced, you know? Like, we don't stop to think, like, because there is a considerably complex variety of places where every sound we speak is pronounced inside our mouth, you know? Some of them are pronounced in the nose, in our nose. Some of them in our teeth, you know? Some of them in this place or that place of our tongue, you know? Some of them in our throat, or in this or that place of our mouth. It's pretty complex, but also pretty interesting. And again, if your task, especially if you speak more than one language, especially if, like, it's not only English you want to sound good at, you know, you should totally go for it. The International Phonetic Alphabet, you know. But that's it for today. I really appreciate your company, just as usual. That's all for this episode. I see you in the next one. Have a lovely weekend, and bye-bye.